Sometimes life gives us everything we think we want: success, money, recognition, yet leaves us with an emptiness no amount of wealth can ever fill. This is the story of a man who seemed to have it all but realized he had nothing that truly mattered. And it took a simple act of kindness from a stranger, someone he would have never noticed before, to show him what family really means. If you're watching this, stay with me until the end, because this story may just remind you of the one thing in life worth fighting for. And before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Everyday Grace Stories, where we share powerful, true-to-heart stories that touch the soul. His name was Daniel Crawford. To the world, he was a millionaire businessman. He owned companies, investments, cars that only few could dream of. Every headline praised his vision, his achievements, his unmatched discipline. On the surface, Daniel was a man people envied. But behind the closed doors of his enormous glass mansion, silence was his only companion. No children's laughter filled his halls, no warm voice called his name when he came home. He had sacrificed love for success, told himself relationships were distractions, and let time slip away until he was in his late 50s, sitting alone in a house that felt more like a museum than a home. Every night, Daniel would sit at his marble dining table with a meal prepared by staff, untouched, because he had no appetite. Sometimes he walked through the city, hoping the noise of life around him could drown out the quiet in his chest. But no matter where he went, the truth followed him: he was lonely. And loneliness, when carried for too long, becomes heavier than any burden money can buy your way out of. One cold evening in December, when the city streets were lit with festive lights, Daniel walked through a park. Families gathered around small food stalls, parents held their children's hands, couples laughed together, and groups of friends shared stories over hot chocolate. Daniel, in his expensive coat, walked like a ghost among them, unseen. That's when he heard a soft voice: "Sir, would you like some soup?" He turned and saw a little girl, no more than 8 years old, holding a steaming cup with her tiny hands. She wore a coat too thin for the cold, and her cheeks were flushed from the wind. Beside her was a small folding table where she and her mother were serving soup to passers-by. Daniel almost refused. He never took food from strangers, much less from those who looked like they needed help themselves. But the way the little girl's eyes sparkled, as if giving him that cup meant the world, made him pause. He accepted it and took a sip. The soup was simple, but it warmed him more than any 5-star meal ever had. He asked her, "Why are you doing this out here in the cold?" The girl smiled shyly and said, "Because some people don't have anyone to take care of them. My mom says even small kindness can make someone feel less alone." Her words struck him deeper than she could ever understand. He stood there for a long time, watching as the girl and her mother handed out soup to strangers, some homeless, some just cold travelers passing by. They laughed, talked, and shared what little they had as though it were a feast. Daniel realized in that moment these two, with almost nothing, were richer in heart than he had ever been. He found himself returning the next evening, and the evening after that. Soon he learned their names. The girl was Lily, and her mother, Sarah, worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat. They lived in a small rented apartment, barely making ends meet, yet they still found ways to serve others. When Daniel offered them money for their kindness, Sarah shook her head. "We don't do it for money," she said. "We do it because people need family, even if just for a moment." The words kept echoing in his mind: people need family. For weeks, Daniel joined them, at first just standing nearby, then slowly helping to hand out cups of soup. He felt alive in those moments. He began to laugh again, to feel something in his chest other than emptiness. Lily would tug on his hand and chatter about her school, about the stories she read, about how she wished she had a bigger family. Sometimes, she told him, "I pretend you're my grandpa." Daniel had to turn away to hide the tears in his eyes. Nobody had ever looked at him that way before. Winter passed, and spring came. Daniel, who had once been surrounded by luxury but no love, now found himself spending more and more time with Sarah and Lily. They invited him to their small apartment, where dinner was often just rice and vegetables, but somehow it tasted better than anything his chefs had ever prepared. They celebrated Lily's birthday with homemade cake, and for the first time in decades, Daniel felt what it meant to belong. But the journey wasn't simple. Daniel struggled with guilt for the years he had wasted, guilt for having so much and doing so little for others. There were moments he thought about retreating, about walking away, because he didn't know if he deserved the love they were offering him. Yet every time he saw Lily's bright eyes, every time Sarah set another plate at the table without hesitation, he realized that family wasn't about deserving, it was about showing up, about being present. Months turned into a year, and Daniel made a decision that shocked everyone who knew him. He began closing down parts of his business, selling off properties he never stepped into, and channeling his wealth into community programs that supported families like Sarah's. He built kitchens where free meals were served, funded scholarships for children, and started a foundation in Lily's name. The press called it a miraculous transformation, but Daniel knew it was something far simpler. He had just discovered love. One evening, as they sat together in Sarah's little living room, Lily curled up beside him and whispered, "Do you think family is something you're born with, or something you find?" Daniel held her close and said, "I think family is the people who make you feel like you belong. And I found mine in the most unexpected place." He wasn't the same man anymore. He wasn't just a millionaire. He was a father figure, a grandfather, a friend, and a man who finally understood the true meaning of wealth. And so, dear listener, let this story remind us of something we all tend to forget: success, money, and fame may build walls of comfort, but they cannot build a home. Family can be born from blood, but it can also be found in the moments when strangers open their hearts to us. In the end, what matters most is not how much we own, but how much love we share. So if you take anything from Daniel's story, let it be this: family can be waiting for you in the most unexpected place. Don't let loneliness convince you otherwise. And if this story touched your heart, please give it a like and subscribe to Everyday Grace Stories, where we continue to share stories that remind us of the grace that lives in everyday life.